Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to join you today for this webinar. I am delighted to have been invited by Prep Advisor to present this information to you today, and I hope that by the time our webinar concludes, you will feel that you've gotten something that will be of great help to you as you consider pursuing an MBA at some point in the future. I'd like to share with you a little bit more about myself very quickly. Probably one of the things that would be most of interest to you is that I did spend 11 years of my 28 years in the area of enrollment and student services at the Chicago Booth School of Business. I was Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid there, and then became Associate Dean for the Fulltime MBA program. And during that 11 years, among other things, I personally evaluated over 80,000 full-time MBA applications. I say that just to let you know that what you're going to be hearing today is based on that period of time that I spent at Chicago Booth and also at Columbia University, Northwestern University, and Wheaton College. My entire career has been focused on helping prospective graduate students navigate the process of researching and applying to and then selecting the graduate school they will attend. It's been an incredible career. I couldn't wish for anything more, and I hope all of you have a similarly outstanding career in the days ahead. As you'll see, I've also been on your side of the table. I have earned 2 graduate degrees, one a Master of Arts, the other a PhD. So I've sat where you are, embarking on this journey, and in some cases feeling a bit nervous about it, wondering if I can really do it. That's why I've added to the agenda some of the roadblocks that I believe hold prospective students back from pursuing their graduate educational goals. I've also published a book. I published the first edition in 2008. The second edition came out just about a year and a half ago in the summer of 2018. And I'll share more about that later in our time together here. Now I'd like to share with you a little bit about what I plan to discuss today. There are 3 what I might call major pieces of information I want to pass along, and they are numbers 2, 3, and 4 on this agenda. I want to talk about some roadblocks which hold prospective students back from actually pursuing their goal of grad school. Then I'm going to discuss, as Alex mentioned, 7 very important questions that prospective students often ask. And then I want to share something that, to me, if you don't take anything else away from this webinar today, I hope you'll take this away. What is the biggest mistake prospective graduate students make? This happens every year. It's completely preventable, but it does happen. So if you have been making this mistake already, believe me, you're in very good company. Thousands upon thousands make this mistake every year. Then I want to share, as I said, a little bit about my book, about our coaching services with Grad School Roadmap, let you know when you might be able to meet with me again. This is the first of several webinars I'm delighted to be doing for Prep Advisor, and I'll tell you when the next one is going to be, so that if you like what you heard today, maybe you can join me again and invite some of your friends to come along. Then we'll close with some opportunity for you to ask me any questions that you like. Alex will be taking a look at those and letting me know what the questions are, and I'll do my best to answer any and all of them as much time as time permits. Okay, first of all, what is Grad School Roadmap? You saw that on the first slide, that I represent Grad School Roadmap. Well, it's really a boutique admissions resource for prospective students and other groups. I founded Grad School Roadmap in 2008. Our team is exclusively former graduate admissions deans or directors, which is something that I'm very passionate about. I believe if you're going to be getting information from someone about this process, this very important process of getting a graduate degree, earning one, it's important that you be speaking with someone who, as they say, has been there and done that. And we have. As you've heard me say, I did this for 28 years. It was my entire career. So what we share is based on that wealth of background that we have. As you can see, we speak on college and university campuses. We do webinars constantly, and we've coached to date over 350 graduate school applicants with a success rate or an admission rate of 97%. So it's been a very, very wonderful adventure these last 12 years, and have enjoyed it very much. So that's just a little bit about who I am and Grad School Roadmap. Now, I want to move to the very first of these three main pieces of information that I'd like to share with you today. That first is 4 roadblocks for prospective graduate students. What do I mean by a roadblock? Well, I guess I would describe it as maybe a myth, a perception about something that you believe will prevent you from getting a graduate education. And over the years, as I've talked with prospective students, these 4 roadblocks have been mentioned the most in terms of, Dr. Don, this is a situation, and so I don't think I'm going to go to grad school. So I want to discuss these because I believe that there may be some genuine roadblocks that hold people back for a period of time, or perhaps for a longer period of time. But these 4, I do not believe should truly be roadblocks. I don't believe they are, even though many prospective students think they are. So what's the first roadblock? Well, you might guess it. I can't afford it. It's too expensive. I just don't have the financial means to afford to go to graduate school. This is a very real concern, I would say, on the part of just about every single prospective student worldwide, because graduate education is not cheap. It is expensive. But I would suggest to you that it is also affordable with some planning, with some research ahead of time. There are some things both US citizens and international students can do to increase the likelihood of them receiving free money, scholarships, fellowships, assistantships, grants, whatever it may be. There are opportunities for that to happen. And I believe oftentimes prospective students are not as well informed about some of these choices and some of these options. So please don't automatically assume that this is off limits because of the cost. I will share from personal experience. I actually ended up going for my master's and my PhD, both degrees. I started out with absolutely no scholarship help whatsoever. I did not have any help. I had to borrow for the entire at the beginning of both programs. I ended up graduating at the time of graduation, owing less than $5,000 US dollars for my master's degree, and owing less than $10,000 for my PhD, without any scholarships at the beginning. Maybe someday I can do a webinar on financing your graduate education. I'd be happy to do it. If you have questions for me today about this whole business, or after the webinar is over, I'm going to leave you my contact information. Please don't hesitate to call me. But please don't entirely rule out earning a graduate degree because of finances. It is expensive, but I would argue equally so, it is affordable. Okay, roadblock number 2. I hear this so often. Dr. Don, my grades and test scores, they're not high enough. I didn't do well in my undergraduate experience. I have below a 3.0 GPA in terms of the US evaluation system. My test scores are very low, and they won't look at me. Well, if you're talking maybe one of the very top ranked programs in business education, perhaps, yes, you may be at more of a disadvantage if you have a lower GPA or lower test scores. But even in those instances, when I worked at Chicago Booth, you might be surprised at the GPA or test scores of some of the applicants we admitted. Now, granted, we didn't do this all the time, but there were instances where there was an explanation for those lower grades, or there was a plausible explanation for low test scores. We took that seriously because we evaluated everything in the application. We didn't just, some schools will look at grades and test scores initially, and if something doesn't look right, you're denied right away without looking any further. That's not what most admissions offices do. They will look at everything they've requested from you, your resume, your letters of recommendation, your essays, an interview report if you did one, whatever it may be. Everything is evaluated. I will also tell you that the further out you are from undergrad, and especially in the case of MBA applicants, most MBA applicants have between 3 and 5 years work experience after they've completed their undergraduate education. That means something. That's very important. And that serves to counterbalance perhaps a less high GPA. So once again, please don't make the mistake of automatically assuming that because your grades or test scores are too low, you won't have a chance. That is absolutely not true. So don't let that be a roadblock for you. Number 3, I have to get into a top ranked program. I have to do that. I can't, if I get into a top 30 program, that's not good enough. Well, I understand that all of us, every one of us, likes to think that we're competitive enough to get into a really high ranked program. That's a very nice accomplishment. I do not have any quibble with that at all. That makes sense. And I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't look at top ranked programs. But let's just think about this for a moment. Did you know there are over 800 accredited MBA programs in this world? Over 800, probably more by now. But when I last checked, about 800 of them. I find it fascinating that some students think that only the top 5 are worth considering. I think that's a little short-sighted, to be honest with you. Furthermore, I've been doing this work, as I've told you, for 28 years now. And I can honestly tell you that in that time, I have yet to see any at all, reliable, valid data, statistical evidence, if you will, that successfully correlates where you got your MBA with your ultimate success in life. There is none. I hope I'm not discouraging you, and please don't hear me telling you that you shouldn't look at top schools. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the facts demonstrate that your success in life is not based on where you got your education. Very little of that. It might open some doors in the beginning, but if you took a look at the alumni list of the top 5 MBA programs currently ranked, I bet you'd find there's many who have been dismal failures. So this is not the end all. Just be careful that you don't settle for just deciding to apply to the top programs without doing something further, which we're going to talk about later in the presentation. The final and 4th roadblock, I'm too old. Some students believe that, for instance, with an MBA program, if they get into their 30s, it's not worth it. Nobody will look at them. I would beg to differ with you on this. In fact, there are more and more older students entering the MBA arena. Now, many of those are part-time or executive MBA, but even in the full-time MBA program, we admitted students at Chicago Booth when I was there for 11 years. Now, we didn't admit droves of students like this, but our age range of the students we admitted was 22 to 42. Yes, you heard me correctly, 22 to 42. So again, it is not so much your age as what you've done in the time leading up to your application. That's what matters. Why are you doing this if you're a bit older? What is your thinking process? What is your rationale? Why do you want to pursue an MBA at this stage? And if that makes sense and you've got a great application to go along with it, the chances are you're going to be admitted. Now, The Career Services Office may want to speak with you about some career options, which may be a little more limited based on age. But the field is wide open regardless of your age. So here again, these 4 issues, perceptions, concerns, whatever you might call them, I believe are roadblocks, but not permanent roadblocks. They may be initial perceptions you have. I consider them myths. I don't believe any of these 4 are true. So I hope you'll keep this in mind as you continue with your planning. By the way, Alex mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we are going to be taking questions. I hope you're going to start asking them. You can send them, put them in the question box right now. As I go through the presentation, if you have a question, don't risk forgetting it. Write it down, send it in, and then Alex will organize these questions and ask them to me when we conclude the presentation. Okay, let's move to the second of the 3 issues that I wanted to discuss, or the 3 areas I'd like to present today. This is what 7 questions that prospective MBA students often ask. I guess you could expand this to other prospective students, not just MBA, but certainly these are 7 questions I was often asked about when prospective students were initially doing their research and considering where they were going to apply. Question number 1, what about full-time versus part-time? What are the advantages? Should I really stop my job and go full-time, or should I continue working and go part-time? The wonderful answer to this question is that both of these are absolutely equally viable options, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most MBA experts. There really is not ultimately a difference in terms of your outcome of graduating and moving on with your career. The difference may be your own situation. Some prospective students, and not only your situation, but what it is you're really looking for. It could be that you really do want to delve into an MBA program. You don't want to be distracted with work. You want to have the chance to just focus on that alone. Well, then you have your answer. Then a full-time program would probably be better. Others, maybe you have family concerns. Maybe you have other issues that are weighing. Maybe you're working in a family business, or maybe financially you just don't believe you could afford to do a full-time program, but you do believe you could figure out a way to do it on the part-time basis. Either one of these options is absolutely viable. I do not, honestly, at this stage, there is really the only major difference is the amount of time it may take you to complete the program. Obviously, it would take a little longer if you're going part-time. But I can tell you that at Chicago Booth, the full-time program course requirements, career services options, extracurricular opportunities, leadership programs are the same whether you're full-time or part-time. It really, there's very little difference, if any, except for the time frame. So that's how I would answer that question. The second question, what about studying in the US versus studying elsewhere, studying abroad? Well, here again, I would say what I did for question number 1. There is no preferable place to earn your MBA other than what you believe will be best for you. For instance, some MBA or prospective MBA students would like to work in Europe or Asia or Latin America or Australia or Africa. They want to do their life's work overseas. It may be that a very good MBA program in Europe or Asia or Latin America or whatever would be beneficial in that way. It would not be necessary to come to the US. Others, some international students, for instance, would like to have a study experience in the US and then bring that back with them to their home country. Vice versa. Some US citizens prefer to study abroad and bring that experience back with them to the US. The quality of MBA programs, again, is outstanding, outstanding. And once again, per my earlier comment, the ranking of a program is less important than what you have taken from that program, how well you learned from that program, and who you are as a person. When it ultimately comes to hiring you, to evaluating you, I believe most recruiters would say they look far less at where you went, but what you learned and who you are and whether you're a good fit for them. That's what's most important. So here again, in terms of full-time, part-time, US, abroad, the field is wide open. You have many, many options that you can consider, all of them fairly equally viable. Question number 3. What are the best criteria for me to evaluate in an institution? Well, this again may vary depending on the person. In my book, in chapter 1, I actually suggest that there could be 26 aspects of a program that you might want to evaluate. 26. Most students don't evaluate anything. So I'm glad I was going to say, I'm glad you asked this question. I think I should say, I'm glad I put it in the list. But let me give you an example. There's at least one particular aspect I would think every single MBA applicant would want to know about, a question they'd want to ask, or I should say, an individual they'd want to speak with. And that individual is a current student and a recent graduate. This is critical. I'm appalled at the number of prospective MBA applicants who never speak with anyone who attended the program or is currently attending. They don't put that in their list of criteria. Oh my word. In my opinion, once you've selected the list of schools to which you're going to apply, one of your first orders of business would be to reach out to current students and recent graduates. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to reach out to 10 individuals per school. It could be 2 per school, 1 student, 1 alum, or maybe 2 students, whatever. And there are always 2 questions you want to ask. In every case, when you get a hold of a current student or a recent graduate, here are 2 questions you should absolutely ask them every time. Number 1, what did you or do you like most and least about this program? And they better be able to tell you both, because no program is, you better not be looking for perfection in an MBA program. You're not going to find it. Excuse me a minute, I just need to take a drink of water. Okay, so remember, schools are good, and there's some great options out there for you, but you should not be looking for perfection. So you want to ask, what did you or do you like most and least about this program? The second question, so very important. If you had it to do over again, would you still choose to go to this program? Knowing what you know now, would you choose to attend if you had it to do over again? Those are huge questions, very telling from the very individuals who've gone ahead of you and who are there either right now. That's why I suggest either right now or very recently. Talking with an alum who was there 20 years ago might give you some information, but it's not going to be current. You want current information about that program right now. There are other criteria that may be of value to you per what we said before. What kind of part-time program do they offer? What's included in it? Is this program, of course, abroad or in the US? What is the class size? Some MBA prospective students like large classes, hundreds of students. Others do not prefer that. They prefer a much smaller class size. And thankfully, there are both. There's a wide variety of class sizes out there. So you should be asking yourself, what is most important to me? And I would suggest that you not start out with what is the ranking of the school. I really would. You might want to put that on there, but I wouldn't have, that wouldn't be my first question. My first question or questions or criteria would be, what are the things that are most important to me as a person, just to me, as I evaluate this program? Okay, question number 4. Good question here. I'm often asked, should I reach out to faculty? Absolutely, yes, you should reach out to faculty. Now, will all of them respond? Probably not. I found a very differing response rate among faculty when prospective students reached out versus if admitted students reached out before they started attending. But nonetheless, there are many, many faculty who are willing to speak with you. And if even more so, you have done some research and discovered that there is a faculty member or two at a particular business school that really you would love the opportunity to study with. You just have been amazed by their research, their papers, a book you read, a speaking engagement you attended, whatever it may be. By all means, you should reach out to them. There is, and in some cases, this should never be, you should never, ever, ever, ever ask them to recommend you to the admissions committee. That's a no-no. That's the kiss of death if you do that. Do not ever, ever, ever ask them to do that. But it may very well be that as the result of some communication with you, some faculty of their own volition will recommend you to the admissions committee. This happened to me all the time at Chicago Booth. I'd get an email message or I'd see a faculty member in the hallway. They'd say, Don, I've been communicating with a student. I'm so impressed with them. Can I send you some information? I'd say, sure. And they would send me something. So your purpose in reaching out to them is to understand a little more about what they're doing, find out if they ever hire students to work with them as an assistant. That's something you could inquire about. Make sure to ask if they're planning to be teaching in the coming year. Some tenured faculty members rotate the classes that they teach. They don't always teach the same class every year. You might want to know if they're planning to teach in the year that you're wanting to start. Those are very, very valid questions. And if you have a question about something you've read that they wrote or said or published, whatever, by all means, believe me, faculty members love to talk about their research. They love to do that. So by all means, especially if you're planning far enough ahead, you will have time to do this. It could be very important to you that you do. Okay, question number 5. Oh dear, our time is moving along quickly here. Let me keep going. Is a campus visit really important? Yes, it is. But let me quickly add what I mean by that. Not everyone has the ability to visit campus in person, but they do have the ability to either visit in person or visit online, take an interactive campus tour, familiarize themselves with the campus. That's what's critical. You need to be able to know about the campus that you might end up being on for 2 years or longer. That is critical. Some of the students that would come to Chicago Booth, do you know they never ever looked about where we were located? Nothing. This happened at Columbia. I'd have students come in to speak with me, had never visited the campus, just were so mesmerized because it was New York, I guess. Or in the case of Chicago Booth, you know, something about Booth being so highly ranked or the incredible number of Nobel Prize winners on the faculty, which are all good things, mind you. But they clearly had not looked very closely at the campus itself. That's important. You need to be able to know about that because if you're asked, why are you considering our program, you may want to share with them a couple of specific things about the campus that have impressed you. So again, visiting in person is not absolutely critical. If you can, yes, I think that would be incredible. You do get a better feel if you're there in person than if you're visiting interactively. But between the two options, yes, you need to make sure you are familiar with each of the campuses of the institutions that you're considering. That is very, very important. Next question. What about extracurricular volunteer activities? Is that important for my application? I have 3 words for you. Yes, yes, and yes. Absolutely, this is important. Now, let me qualify that with one thing. Some students have to work during their undergraduate years, or there were other things that they have to take care of loved ones. They had a medical crisis of their own. and they were not as free to do some of these things. If that's the case, that's perfectly understandable. And therefore, that needs to be explained in an essay, in an optional essay, or an additional essay. However, many MBA programs, almost all, have what's called an optional or additional essay. And they ask, is there anything else you would like to tell us about your background that would help us? That's where you should tell them that. But if that is not the case, yes, we do want, MBA programs are looking for students who are not just solid academically, but who have the ability to reach beyond academics, to be involved with their fellow students, get involved extracurricularly or in volunteer activities. And also, let me qualify here by saying it doesn't, some students, I think, feel like they have to have 5 or 10 of these. They have to have this long list. No. That doesn't help. 2 or 3 at the most is all you need. It doesn't have to be. Now, if you have more, that's fine. But and another suggestion here, please do not start doing all of this 6 months before you apply. That's worse than not doing something, because it very much looks like you just started all of these things out of the clear blue, knowing that you were going to apply a few months down the road. That doesn't look very good. So yes, where you can, do some extracurricular work, do some volunteer work. It's a phenomenal thing to do. I do it myself right now. I volunteer on a regular basis. So get involved in that. But remember, it's not the quantity of these things, it's the longevity of them and the quality of them that demonstrate that this is something that is really a part of your life, that you didn't just start a few months before applying. Okay, the last of our 7 questions, and I know there are many more questions. I have 10 in my book. But here's the 7th. How can I truly be noticed as an applicant? As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I have the privilege of having been invited by Prep Advisor to do some additional webinars this year. And I'm going to be telling you about my next one toward the end of this presentation, but we're going to be covering this in some of our upcoming webinars. All of these are good questions. This is particularly a good question for you as you consider applying. For right now, I'm going to just mention a couple of quick things. The very best advice I could ever give you of how to be noticed, and I probably should have said, how can I truly be positively noticed? Because applicants get noticed, but sometimes it's not in the way they want to be noticed. So this is, how can I be really noticed in a good way? 2 words. I hope you write this down. 2 words. Be yourself. Be yourself. I believe sometimes that MBA admissions offices do a disservice to applicants by suggesting that they have to have this incredible story and they have to be so motivated. And yes, we are wanting to get to know applicants, but I think it ends up making applicants think that if they don't have some horrendous something they've overcome, or they climbed, Mount Everest, or they swam the English Channel, or if there's not some major humongous thing in their life, they're not going to be noticed. The best way to get noticed, especially in the beginning, in any interaction, is to be yourself. While most of us are not psychologists, I think we all, as human beings, have a sense of when someone is being themselves and someone isn't. When you meet someone for the first time, when you're around someone in a group setting or whatever, it seems to me that we all get a sense, this person just doesn't seem like they're on the level. They don't seem to be very honest. It feels like they're pretending, like they're acting, like they're being fake. When you get that sense of someone, what is your reaction to them? Do you want to run up to them and say, oh, let's have a cup of coffee, I really want to get to know you better? No, you kind of back off and say, oh, I'm going to kind of watch them a little more closely. I don't know about them. Well, it's the same in the admissions process. If admissions folks get a sense that you are trying to be somebody you're not, that is the kiss of death. That's the worst thing you can do. So be yourself. Just be who you are. Oscar Wilde, the famous individual, said it best when he said, Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Great advice. And further on this year in the webinars, I'll talk about some other ways that you can truly stand out in a positive way as an applicant. I hope the questions here and more particularly the responses have been helpful to you. Now let's move to the third and final of the informational types of this webinar that I want to present. And as I said at the beginning, if you don't take anything else away, if you didn't write anything else down today, I hope you will write this down. What is the biggest mistake MBA applicants make? You may have guessed this already, and I'm going to try something here. In the questions box on your control panel, now there are no right or wrong answers. I'm not going to read them out to anybody or anything like that, but would any of you be willing to write in the question box what you think the biggest mistake is that MBA applicants make? Would anybody like to take a chance and do that right now? I'll wait I'm not trying to force anybody, but I'll wait about 10 seconds. So does anybody have a response as to what you believe the biggest mistake is that prospective MBA applicants make? Well, I don't see anyone putting an answer. Alex, just so I'm sure that I'm seeing this, do you see anything on your end?
Actually, there is one answer that I can see.
Okay, for some reason it didn't come through. Can you tell me what it is, please?
Just a second.
Okay. Well, Alex,
can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. The applicants do not optimize their time properly.
They do not organize their time appropriately?
Yeah.
Okay, good answer. That is a very good answer. And you know what? That is, whoever gave that, that's an excellent response. That is one of the things that applicants, where they make mistakes. You're absolutely, in fact, it's interesting you said that, whoever it was, because wait till you see what my next webinar title is in April. Wait till you see what we're going to talk about. So that was excellent. Thank you. I would like to suggest that based on my experience, the biggest mistake MBA applicants make is this. And there we go. Not doing adequate research before applying. That is the biggest mistake that you can ever make. And what's sad is there's no excuse to make this mistake. I just mentioned when I wrote my book, the first chapter is all about how to do good research, among other things. But it's an entire chapter devoted to helping you well before you submit those applications. As I said earlier, there are 800 accredited MBA programs out there, and many applicants do not do any research at all. It's so sad to me. Their sole reason for applying is a ranking and word of mouth. Now, those are okay, but they should be included in a host of other areas you're looking at, not just those. If you only go with those, I think you've shortchanged yourself. Your biggest mistake is not doing adequate research. Now, couple of tips on how you can avoid this mistake. Number one, as I said earlier, spread the net wide. If you have 800 MBA programs to consider, even if you've already narrowed it down to, I want to study in the US, I want to study abroad, okay, that narrows it down. Maybe you've decided that you would prefer studying in a larger urban area versus a more rural setting, that's okay. But that you should not be thinking of names of business schools right now. You should just be thinking of what you think you would like the most, what would be most appealing to you. Then you start plugging in the names. Many people have the names first before they look at anything else. In my opinion, that's completely backwards. You need to spread the net very wide. Number two, create a spreadsheet. This is discussed very thoroughly in my book, first chapter. Create a spreadsheet. And in my opinion, you should start out with a minimum of 20 or 25 MBA programs, not 5. You should start out with many, many more. You're not going to apply to all of these, nor should you be ranking them yet. You should have them in alphabetical order. No ranking. Ranking comes at the end, not at the beginning, not before you even started out. That comes after you've done your research. Then you do your rank order for yourself. Create a spreadsheet. These options on the left-hand column in alphabetical order, across the right-hand column, all the things you'd like to compare. What did the current student tell me about this place? What did the recent graduate say about it? How large is the class I'll be involved in? Can I interact with faculty? Excuse me. Can I interact? Here's another one. I would think you would want to know whether faculty teach the classes or if they have teaching assistants do it. Many top schools, the faculty don't even teach. And yet some students go there thinking that's what's going to happen because they didn't do any research. These are things you should be putting on this spreadsheet, very specific things you want to compare. And in my opinion, you should complete every box on the spreadsheet, every single box, before you then say, okay, I've got 20 options here, I've got 25. Here's the 10 right now that I think I like. I'll do a little more checking with them and then maybe narrow it down. Most MBA applicants apply to between 5 and 7 programs on average. So it's after you've spread the net wide, after you've created the spreadsheet, after you've done your due diligence, then you make that decision of where you're going to apply. The third way, as I got a little ahead of myself here, I've already said on that spreadsheet, when you fill in those boxes, what you're doing is you're comparing. That's exactly what you should be doing. When you buy a car, or do you just take somebody else's word for it? Oh, this is a nice car, and you say, okay, I'll buy it, I'll go get it. Of course not. You do your own testing. You do your own research. You don't rely on somebody else's ranking or what somebody else said. You can listen, but that doesn't usually affect your final decision about that car. That's a very personal decision that you make. And in other areas, you listen to people, but then you make your own decision. The same applies here. You need to spend enough time doing some genuine comparison shopping so you really know. Have you done it? Do you know where the campus is located? Have you had a chance to get a sense of what it would be like walking around that area day after day? I had students at Columbia come into me and say, I hate it here. This neighborhood is horrible. And I felt like saying, you mean to tell me you didn't check that out before you got here? That's on them. That's their mistake. You don't want to make this mistake. Most people get 1 or 2 graduate degrees in a lifetime. I haven't met too many people who keep going around, oh, I'll get another one, I'll get another one. No, this is a once in a lifetime experience, and you want to make the most of it, and you can. There's so much information out there today. There's no excuse for not getting this type of information and doing this type of good research before you ever submit an application. Do you sense I'm pretty passionate about this? I am. And as I said, perception or rankings is where you end up after you've done all of this, not where you start out. I hope you'll write that down. Perception is where you end up, not where you start out. That's a huge difference. And many applicants err on the side of starting out with perception rather than waiting to end up with it. I hope you will not be one of them. Okay, let's move to my book. I mentioned it in the presentation. This is the only comprehensive book on the graduate research and application process out there. I promise you, it is the only book out there like it. It's only 106 pages. I deliberately made it shorter so folks could really delve into it. There are 4 chapters. The first chapter, all about the research process, as we've said. The second chapter, all about the application process. 7 ways to stand out positively. 7 ways to stand out negatively, what I call the 7 deadly sins. 10 critical application tips. Each section of the application, resume, recommendations, essays, extracurricular, volunteer, everything, interviews, whatever. I talk about that. Third chapter, I've seen no other book at all address this, how to succeed once you're there, how to succeed once you are enrolled in this MBA program. And lastly, the fourth chapter is a list of top 10 questions that are often asked by 4 groups: prospective students, applicants, admitted students, and current students. 4 top 10 lists, the top 10 questions, and my answers to those questions. If you would like to purchase the book, you can get it on Amazon, or you can go to my website, which I'm going to give you the address in a moment, gradschoolroadmap.com. There's a section on there about the book. When you click on it, you'll go to the order page. And when you get there, if you use this promo code MBA Tour, you will get a free copy of the book. You can also use another promo code, GSRM, Grad School Roadmap, and it will give you a greatly reduced price on the book. So if you're interested, feel free to get the book. Now, before we go to questions and answers, we still have some time left. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about my coaching services. I do offer coaching with graduate school applicants, MBA applicants. I've been doing this for 12 years. So far, I've worked with over 300 students, 350, as I mentioned earlier in the program. And to date, we have a 97% acceptance rate. Last year, I'm thrilled, I was elated. The acceptance rate for the fall of 2019 was 100%. Everyone got in, and we're up over $5 million in scholarship funding for my applicants who've been admitted. If you choose to work with me, you will find that my rates are very reasonable. It does not cost thousands of dollars to work with me. I don't believe in that. I believe my rates are some of the best out there. Truly, they're some of the lowest you will find, and you will work exclusively with me. You will work just with me, however long you choose to have that relationship of working with me. It will be with me alone. As I mentioned, I bring 28 years of experience in the graduate admissions arena, including 11 years at Chicago Booth. And if you would like to learn more about this or talk about anything with me related to your MBA goals and dreams, I offer a 30-minute free consultation, and you can take advantage of that. So I hope many of you might consider that. Now, I mentioned I wanted to let you know where you might meet me again at some point down the road. I'm going to be participating and being interviewed at 3 Access MBA events in the States next month. They are in New York City, as you'll see, Los Angeles and San Francisco. If some of you are in that area already, or you might be traveling to that area at that time, please contact Access MBA or Prep Advisor and find out how you can register for these events. You're more than welcome to join us if they have a process that they will go through to decide who gets to go, and I hope you might be one of them. So, and then you can join me again on Friday, April 24th, when I talk about a very important aspect of the research process. It's in chapter 1 of my book, the MBA application checklist. These are critical things you need to be doing, again, well ahead of applying. You don't want to wait and rush through these things and be doing them all at once with only 4 weeks to go before you have to submit first round applications. Many people do this. They end up rushing, making absolutely unnecessary mistakes, and it costs them. They end up being denied or waitlisted. Don't let that happen to yourself. Join us on Friday, April 24th. Tell your friends. We'd love to have you join us at that time for that webinar. Okay, we're approaching the end of the webinar. Here is my contact information. As I told you, if you are looking for a 30-minute consultation, you can email me directly at dmartin@gradschoolroadmap.com. You can call me, or you can complete our contact form at the gradschoolroadmap.com website, where you can also go to order a book. All right, I certainly hope that this information today has been helpful to you. That's my #1 goal. I hope you're leaving, when we finish in a few minutes, I hope you will be leaving feeling that you got something that you came to get here. And if you have any other questions that you are not planning to submit for Alex to ask me today, please feel free to contact me directly. I'll be happy to chat with you or answer your questions. But right now, I hope you've sent some questions in. And thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to stay online now. And Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you to see if we have any questions that anyone has asked.
First, I would like to thank you for the meaningful presentation. And actually, I would suggest that we proceed with the questions because we have a couple.
Okay.
So the first one would be, do you think we shall apply to 4 or 5 programs, or it is better to concentrate to 1 or 2? How can we understand our chance to be accepted preliminarily?
That's a very good question. In my opinion, I think it's dangerous to only select 2 schools, especially the higher ranked they are. Some applicants, as I said, they only think they want to go to a top school, so they'll select 1 or 2, and the chances of admission are lower. Most MBA programs do give some information on the admissions website about the percentage of their applicants that they admit. So in my opinion, you are wise in the list of schools that you're considering to perhaps mix it up a little bit. If you want to put a top school in there, even if you think you may not have as good a chance, go ahead. I just was coaching with someone recently who said, I just wanted to give it a try, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this person also applied to 6 other programs that were not right at the number 1 or number 2 spot. By the way, it's just came to me, I did my very first event with Access MBA last November in Washington, D.C. And several students came up afterward, and I ended up getting a chance to do some coaching with one of them. And I'm happy to tell you that of the 5 schools he applied to, he has received interview invites to 4 of them. I just thought of that, so I wanted to pass that along. But I recommended in this case that he apply to 5, and he did. I think 1 or 2 is a bit low. I think it ought to be a little bit wider than that. But also keep in mind, many qualified MBA applicants are denied every year, not because there's anything inherently wrong with their application, but simply because there's not enough space. I went through this at Chicago booth every year. It was excruciatingly difficult. We had over 5,000 applications every year for 500 seats in the class. That's 1 out of 10 who could get admitted. That's a very, very difficult process to manage. So when you apply, you put your best foot forward, but if it doesn't work out, that is not an indication that you are inferior or that you are not capable of doing MBA work. Not at all. And we're going to talk later this year in one of the webinars about what to do if you're denied. It is not the end of the world by any stretch. It is absolutely not the end of the world. Very good question. Is there another question, Alex?
So the next question is, will future employers be reluctant to hire me if I am 36 and have paused my career for a full-time program?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Let me make sure I heard the question correctly. You are 36 years old and you are wondering if you would go to a full-time MBA program, how viable you would be as a candidate to be employed. Alex, did I get that right?
Yes, after the full-time program.
After the full-time program. Okay.
Yeah.
You are absolutely viable for employment. Now, that said, if you recall back in the presentation, I said, if you are a bit older, if you're in your 30s or early 40s, when you are admitted, the Career Services Office will probably reach out to you and say something like this: we would like to discuss with you what we are currently finding in terms of where older MBA full-time graduates are most viable for employment positions. And believe me, there are many where they are viable. but there might be some where it's a little less likely, not impossible, but just where there's not as many opportunities. That's the only difference. I'm so glad you asked. Yes, you are viable at that age. You can do a full-time program and be employed afterward. Absolutely, I would absolutely say yes with 100% certainty.
Great,
Good
great.
question.
So the next question is there a wrong answer to the question, why would you like to study an MBA with us? I'm assuming we are talking about the interviews, for example.
Okay, let me make sure I heard the question again, Alex. This person, I believe, is asking what is the best response if asked
So
why
a question, why would you like to study an MBA with us?
Okay. Excellent question. I'm so glad you asked this. And in my presentations, I often discuss this. Whether this is asked of you in an interview or whether it is asked as one of your essay questions, here's what you need to do. You need to be able to provide an answer that cites examples that are not true of any other MBA program. You know what that eliminates? What that eliminates, I'm not making fun of anyone, I'm not criticizing anyone when I say this, but many applicants, when asked why they want to go to a particular school, particular business school, will say things like, you have wonderful faculty, you have wonderful alumni, you have a beautiful campus, I love your curriculum. That means nothing. You know why? Because every business school brags, excellent faculty, excellent students, excellent alumni, beautiful campus, great curriculum. That doesn't tell us anything. That means nothing. You need, I said earlier, the biggest mistake you can make is not doing your research. When you do your research, you need to find out specifically why that program is of interest. Here's what gets the attention of admissions folks for a question like this. I've been communicating with Dr. So-and-so for the past 5 months. I read his book, this book, I read this paper, I listened to a webinar, we've been emailing, I had a chance to meet with him when I visited campus. I'm wanting to study this course with him when I get there. You can't say that about any other business school that you're applying to, only that school. That's very impressive. That's what gets their attention. Another example, you have a foreign exchange program in Australia or New Zealand. I want to participate in that program. I've spoken with the program director, with 4 students who participated in the program last year. I am so excited about this program. There again, you can't say that about any other of the options you're applying to. Those are the kinds of responses that get attention. Not now, oh, and here's another one. Maybe they have a student organization and you've spoken with students in it. You don't just want to say, I'm interested in the Women in Business Club. Well, every business school has a Women in Business Club. Why are you interested in the Women in Business Club at XYZ Business School? Always bring it to the school in particular. That's my advice. Good question. Alex, any other questions?
Yes, we have a couple of questions more. The next one is, how do I know my expensive MBA degree will pay back if it is not one of the top ranked ones?
That's a very good question. In my experience, over the 35 years that I've been now doing this work, or well, I guess I should say 40, isn't that terrible? I started in 1980 in the admissions work. I was only 10. But anyway, in the 40 years that I have been privileged to work in this industry and work with prospective students and watch them go through the application process, and more importantly, graduate and move out into the work world, into their careers, I have rarely seen someone who was not able to do well financially because of the institution they attended. It is my experience, my own personal experience. I went to an undergraduate institution that none of you would have ever heard of. It wasn't even accredited. That never hurt me in my career. If you are good at what you do, if you are able to work with others, and if you have trust, if you can be trusted, if you are a person of integrity, you truly will go go places in your career. Someone told me early in my career, if people know you, like you, and trust you, they will work with you. You can have all the degrees in the world, and if you're not trusted and you're not liked, it doesn't mean anything. I've seen many examples of students who've gone to a top 50 MBA program, a top 100 MBA program. Remember, if there's 800 programs, the top 100 is still pretty good. That's still 1 out of 8. I think that's pretty good. So my point is, absolutely, you will have a return on your investment. If you are not looking to that name to do it for you, if you're looking within, if you're the kind of person who brings integrity, honor, honesty, competence, interpersonal skills, you bring that energy, enthusiasm, motivation, you bring that to the table, you're going to get hired. I promise you that will be true. Next question.
The next question, I believe, is connected with the first one for how many programs do you have to apply to.
Yes.
So it is. So in this case, we have to aim at round 1 to make sure there are enough places for us. I believe it is connected with your answer, actually.
I'm sorry, Alex. I'm not sure I'm understanding. Can we try that again, please?
So in this case, can we have to aim at round 1 to make sure there are enough places for us?
Oh, okay. Well, that is a little harder to determine. I don't think, if I heard the question right, I don't think it's going to be as readily apparent to you before you apply or when you're applying how many spaces are open that year. Now, I will say this. Most MBA programs will provide on their admissions websites how many applicants they had the year before, how many they admitted, and how many they usually enroll. That third number, how many they usually enroll, is about the same every year. It doesn't fluctuate that much. At Chicago Booth, we tended at that time, I'm not sure what they're doing now, but at that time, we admitted around 500 students every year for the full-time program. Maybe it was 490 at one point or 503, but it averaged about 500. So you can usually gain some information on how many students are usually enrolled in this program. What does fluctuate from time to time might be the application count, but again, that doesn't always change all that much either. Good question.
And the last one will be, can I work and study MBA at the same time?
Yes, you can. That's why many folks will do a part-time program. That's usually what that means, is you are working and you are studying in the evenings, or many MBA programs have what's called an evening program or a weekend program. They do what they can to accommodate your schedule so that you can, in fact, and I did this myself, both in my master's, in the second year of my master's program, I was hired at the institution I was attending. They hired me in the admissions office. So I worked full-time and finished my master's degree while I was working. My PhD program, I worked for 4 years. I went 2 years full-time to complete my residency requirement. Then I worked full-time the last 4 years of the degree. So yes, you can do it. Absolutely.
So I believe that was the last question. So
okay.
I would like to thank you again for the presentation and for taking the time to answer all of these questions. And to those of you whose questions were not answered, we will send you the answers via email as soon as we can. And thank you for joining us. We wish you luck in your academic journey. Bye, everyone.